So yeah, it has come to my attention that I didn't make a track breakdown for Slapbox Funk. Came out on my Thinking of You EP back in 2022 on Hospital Records to collab with my good friend Perspective. I did one for all the other tracks on the EP like I normally do, but I didn't do one for this. And that's what this is. We're going to talk about it. And I have a special guest. Mr. Charlie Perspective is here with me, not in the studio, a couple 100 miles away down in London. And he's going to talk about, the first part, which was the sketch that he initially sent me that's like 64 bars, the main idea. He's going to talk through all his bits of how he made that. And after his video clip will transition to what I took from it and how I made it into the tune that it is. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, stay tuned, chapters and stuff in the description as usual if you want to skip around. And yeah, links to hearing it, following us, all that good stuff. Like, comment, subscribe, Patreon, you know the drill. Yeah, without further ado, let's let Charlie take it over.
Hey everyone, it's Perspective here. It has been a while. I actually put a tune out with that name to kind of point a finger at how long it's been since I've been active in the music world. I just wanted to say thank you for checking out Slapbox Funk, obviously released as a collaboration between me and Winslow, Duncan, Mr. Winslow to his students. And yeah, I just wanted to quickly run through some of the project before I sent it through to Duncan to really turn it into a tune. As it stood, it was maybe a 44-second loop that I built. I hit a bit of a roadblock with it, which, that was the point where it's just like, look, I think this is something Duncan could probably be like the best person to take this project to just because of his style. So I shot him the stems and he turned it into what we now call Slapbox Funk. I'll be tearing apart the project as much as I did to it before stemming it out for Winslow to take over on. So we're going to talk through the drums, maybe some sample selection stuff, like the chord stabs, the bass patches, all that kind of fun stuff. I think I did like a very rough kind of mix down and like a faux master is what I call it. But yeah, hopefully you learned something from it. We're going to jump in now over there into the box. I'm going to disappear on camera and I'll see you in there. We're in Logic Pro 10, which is my DAW of choice. So this is the project to Slapbox Funk. Let's just have a real quick listen to 44 seconds worth of this essentially work in progress project. And there you go. So let's just take a real quick look at the drums, see what layers we've got going on, some of the structure. So we've got 3 drum breaks by the looks of it. And then we got 2 kick layers, 2 layers for the snare. We've got some grooviness happening with this clap sample here, which has been panned left and right. We've got a tambourine loop. Got some loose hi-hats, a shuffle layer, and then a top loop. We're not going to do like a super deep dive into this. Really, it's not all that interesting, I suppose. But yeah, just like a real top-down kind of surface scratching look at the project before I kicked it over to Duncan to flesh it out into an actual tune. So processing-wise, all this stuff is going to be like really simple. It's just a little bit of EQ, a little bit of transient shaping to control either the sustain of some samples or to control some of the transients of some samples. And then obviously some compression. Most of the time, what I like to do is use Logic Stock Compressor as essentially a bit of a distortion module as well. That's what this section in the compressor is here. Soft is really good. That gives like a really nice kind of analog-y texture to things and just a nice little bit of grit. So let's just have a real quick listen to the drum sections on their own. even for the sketch, they're sounding pretty full-bodied, actually. So let's just quickly go through some of this processing routing. All of these channels are going into this drum group here. So on the drum channel, you've got McAtee, which is, I can't remember what the desk it's modeled off, but it's an Air Windows emulation plugin of a Mackie Studio desk, which apparently Dillinger used back in the day, and all the other kind of like original jungle heads were using. That's just for a little bit of distortion and kind of like texture, which is really nice. So we're using the SSL channel strip by the looks of it just to roll off some of the low end, but then that's going into an SSL compressor. So this is like the glue compressor for any of you Ableton heads. So after the compressor, we're going into the limiter. It's adding a fair amount of gain. We've got some parallel processing going on. That's all being sent out from here. So all of these channels, they've got a bus that's going out into my parallel processing chain. And then we've got some room reverb, some Valhalla room and distortion. And then we've got like some EQ to control things. And then we've got a little bit of stereo enhancement going on with poly versus wider. And then the snare reverb, really, really simple stuff. Just Valhalla plate, nothing crazy. Again, with that nice distortion trick, just to give it a bit more texture and grit. And then we're controlling the low end to make sure we're not having like a really horrible frequency buildup. So that'll be the drum section out of the way. Let's take a quick look at those stabs. So we've got a group here that's called mallets. We've got some group processing going on here. Then we've got a compressor. We've got RC20, just giving it some sort of like analogy, texture and flavor. Then an EQ just to control some of the low end. So I'm just going to quickly play the group and then we'll break down those individual tracks. So it's got like a really nice kind of retro feel to it. So this first section is called a Serum Bell. By the looks of it, it's a synth hacker preset. Too many people are wrapped up in, you know, whether or not you made something 100% from scratch. So don't worry too much about using presets or samples. Forget all that. Just make stuff. The art is in the process. The art is not about elitism. So it looks like I've used a preset here. I might have changed it. I might have not. But that sounds a little something like this. It sounds quite funny in isolation. Anyway, so we've got, again, some EQ compression going on with that. We've got a Serum mallet. Let's take a look at this Serum instance and we'll give that a play. So that's kind of got like that really kind of retro vintage kids toy merry-go-round on a twisty wind-up mechanism type vibe going on. Texturally, that's really nice. And then to finish it off, we've got this Alchemy mallet. So let's crack open Alchemy. Let's see what's going on and we'll give it a listen. So processing wise, we've got some saturation with Soundtoy's little radiator rolling off the bottom end with some EQ, and we've got a filter and then just into some compression. Nothing too crazy. So just taking a real quick look at these two pad sections. I'm not going to spend too much time on these. Just having a look at the processing. We got some EQ, we got some phase going on, we got some chorus going on. We've got some bussing going on, which is going into an Atmos reverb channel, and that's what they sound like in isolation. Yeah, so it's more like atmospheric textural things just to give a bit of sonic interest. So those two bits, they just kind of add like a little bit of drama to it, fill in some gaps, add some variety, just to make it not super boring and loopy. And then we've got the vocal section here. I say vocals, there's one spoken word section here and the rest of it is kind of like just vocal pad, sampley, kind of choppy stuff going on. You've all heard the tune. I mean, if you're here, you've probably heard the tune already. So I'm not going to go through any of that stuff, but we've got essentially maybe some formant shifting going on. It doesn't look like I'm pitch shifting anything. There's some EQ compression times 2, and all that is going into the Vox reverb. There's nothing crazy going on. There's a little bit of saturation going on with little radiator, but yeah, like nothing too crazy. And last but not least, we've got the bass section. So again, there's not too much going on. I'm sure Duncan's project probably looks very, very different to this, but let's just take a real quick listen to the bass elements, and then we'll quickly go over all the different layers and what they sound like. So we've got some donkey mid basses, and then we've got some fizzy wobbly subs going on. The mid bass is Serum Patch. It sounds a little something like this. You know, it's like a very garagey sort of flavor, which is exactly what I kind of wanted to create with this tune. You know, it's kind of like a really good marriage of classic drum and bass elements with that kind of garage, almost bass-liney synth section, which is really fun and bouncy, especially if you hear it in a rave, in a club. It's got a lot of energy to it, and you know, people move to this tune. And I might even show a clip of Winslow dropping it at Studio 338 a couple of years ago, and some dude with the best ear stretchers I've ever seen going absolutely nuts in almost like an empty dance area, which is amazing to see. But yeah, so that was the mid bass layer. Obviously that's supplemented with just a straight sub, just to give it a bit more weight. The way the MIDI's structured, it's very cool and responsy. So we've got the mid bass that comes in first, and then you've got like the wobbly sub after it. So then we've got the wobbly basses. So we've got a low version and we've got a high version. The high version has got some pitch automation to make it kind of sound like it's falling down, just to give it a bit of movement. This is Serum again. I like Serum. It's real basic, really basic patch as well. It's just 2 sine waves, a little bit of filtering, nothing in the effects section. Quite a tight ADSR envelope, monoed obviously because you don't want anything kind of overlapping. Probably the same sort of thing with the higher sub note, just in a different octave. So 2 sine waves, a little bit of filtering, exactly the same ADSR envelope, mono again. And obviously both of those are offset by 50 cents on each of the oscillators to give it that natural wobble. So they're going out to this fizz layer, which is Corrosion by Hornet Plugins, which is an excellent textural thing that you can give to your basses. I mean, it's used all the time with like minimal styles, quote unquote modern jungle, to give basses texture and a bit of mid-range content as well. So yeah, it just sounds really nice. And just to give you like a quick idea of what the textural layer sounds like on its own without any of the other basses coming through, we're just going to listen to the noise. It just gives that really nice little bit of flavor to your bass. So that's all from me. That was the sketch project for Slapbox Funk. I'm going to hand it back over to Duncan now. He's going to run you through the finished working project. I know we didn't do a super deep dive. There might be a longer version of my section of this video over on my own YouTube channel. But yeah, back over to Duncan, and I'll catch you guys in another video.
Cool. So thanks, Charlie, for doing that. Remember, there's like a longer version going to be on his channel. So go subscribe. Maybe it's already up. Maybe he's working on it. I don't know. So you saw what he did. You saw what we kind of left off with. And now I'm going to show you within my project what I did to turn it into what it is. Remember, this is sort of bird's eye overview of things. I'm not going to dive anything too like nitty gritty. If you want to know that stuff, stick it in the comments. That's Patreon material. You know how it goes. So I'll give you a little taste of what it sounds like now, and then we'll dive in. Yeah, and there's like, obviously it's not that far off from what Charlie did. Just sort of sequencing, adding some layers to the drums, working out the bass stuff, melodic bits. There's like the Techno 4x4 section. So if you pick off where Charlie left off, which is more or less just this drums and bass. Same kick or same drum stems. I'll have a different folder if I messed with these. I think. Yeah, these are his. Just sort of like did some stuff to beef them up. So in this case, nothing, some plugins. Which honestly, I think something's missing because it sounds weaker. But in this case, like, you know, a smaller kick is okay when it's on top of like a bigger bass sound. It also has a bit of transient energy, a bit of a pulse to it. So if I play it with the bass, it sort of fills out the bottom of the kick. It feels like one sound. Got a clap. Nothing too crazy, just kind of tweaking it. So most of this stuff is like all his kind of thing. You can kind of hear a lot of swing is happening, you know what I mean? That's why I sort of sent it to me, as he said, of like, It's up my street of just loads of groove. All I really added in the drums is like that shaker sound that I sort of abuse and everything. There's a little amen on this section. Add a little bit more energy in the top end. So you get just fills it in a bit, adds a bit more texture, a bit more color, a bit more interest. I added this whole like techno section, just 4x4, sort of like kick drum, heavy reverb deal. I don't know when this came in the process of working on this, but I just thought it was a cool idea of just like really pushing it forward and adding loads of energy. You know, like our take, maybe I guess more my take, because he didn't really have any input on this, but my take on like sort of like high energy dance floor stuff. This is like the 4/4 before like it became trendy somewhat. I just thought it was a cool idea. And then like as I worked on it, I was like, yeah, this really works. It's also really fun when you're DJing too, because you like flip that bass in, you know, and it's just like, it starts rumbling. So all it is like the break, the think break that he sent, the drum room stem. It's all monoed, by the way. Yeah, these are all his drum stems. Kick with a big reverb on it. That's not even doing anything. And even more like, you know, reversed, add some bass, some more low end in there. Yeah, and then with the intro is a bit different. Yeah, I just filter down. You know how it goes. It's just a mess, you know, but with a mess comes energy. It's all bust together. Obviously, you see it says techno drums. This is just honestly to really crunch it and make it gross. There's no signs to this. It's the effects. So with none of these plugins on, it sounds like a mess. You know what I mean? We started putting plugins on. I'm gonna loop that section. We have an EQ, add loads of bass, just so I can feed loads of bass into the reverb that's right after it. Yeah, reverb, just a little bit. Camel Crusher doesn't show up, but it's there, doing a lot of compression, some distortion. Another EQ, balance, more or less. We got a pan plugin to make it mono. Filter. And the EQ again for balance. And then utility plugin just to fade it in. I like to do volume automation on utility plugins, game plugins on the mixer rather than mess with the mixer channel. Yeah, so you got your little fade in, blah, 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 opens up, blah, 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 goes away, fades out, fades back in, cuts off. And then there's some fills here and there that just sort of add energy. So we play all the drums together, we get this sound. Blah, blah, blah. When we have drum fills, it sounds like this. Pretty straightforward. It's all sort of copy pasted to do the same sort of fade in, fade out deal. Overall, drums are pretty simple. Processing wise, on the drum bus, didn't do much, sort of EQ out some of the sides in the super low end. There's no reverb on them. Am I doing a drum? Nope, no drum verb. Actually, I think it was just sort of baked into Charlie's stems. Camel Crusher for a little bit of saturation, a little bit of compression. De-esser to get rid of like just some high, some really pokey stuff. Pro Q, again, just balance. And then there's a limiter, which I don't have Ozone 7 on this because this is pre this computer, but I would just be chopping off the peaks, clipping more or less. And that's it for drums. So that's drums. See, I didn't do a whole lot like Honestly, Charlie's really good at drums. I've always been kind of envious of how good he is. Go listen to his music if you haven't. Yeah, we're working on some new stuff. I hope he makes some drums for those too. Come on. So yeah, we're going to talk about bass, which couple tweaks here and there. It's mostly stems, as you already seen, and sort of manipulating those stems to get bass fills and other things, and also like different riffs. And yeah, we'll talk about the rest. Cool. So bass, here we go. So we got this main bass, which all I did was crunch a bit more with Camel Crusher and EQ, a little EQ bump. I don't know. Probably didn't need it, to be honest. We got bass wubs. Are these doing anything? Yeah, they are. Why are they quantized? I don't know. It's his thing. It's his, again. Yeah, balance. I haven't looked at this project in ages. There's some what is this? It's automated. Oh, it's just like a low pass. So when we get here, we get same thing. They get rid of the fizz and stuff on top. Yeah, that's it. On and off, all his stuff, all good. Yeah, there's a little bass fill at the end where it's reverse, the bass mid. Made it a bit, just sort of like sustain. Get rid of some of the reverb he had baked in. So he had the mallet stem, right? Which I think is over here, but pitched down. That was a cool like little effect at the end. I still do that of like in the outro, just pitching down an octave, whatever the main riff is for a cool effect. But yeah, I took one of them and stuck it in a sampler. So I could like play the riff, manipulate it a bit more. Here's the MIDI, which is just exactly what you think it is. No velocity changes. That's the sound of the stem by itself. And then I put some processing on it. So as you noticed, no plugins, stereo, wide. It's nice. With plugins, it's very central. It's not completely mono, but it's down the middle. If you think about how it needs to fit in the mix as a whole, which is very busy, the drums and the tops and all that stuff are pretty wide, pretty full spectrum. So making sure that this little mallet riff is more down the middle, make sure it cuts through the mix. Not in a mono compatibility type way, but just because like if everything's wide, then you sort of lose definition. So if you have like wide drums, wide tops, you know what I mean? Then something more central will poke through that if you're considering your sound stage and stuff. So that's kind of it. The whole riff sounds like I changed the riff in the second half. That's why this is yellow. That means there's like something different about it versus the first section. So I'm making these edits, cutting and pitching the stems to match the riff. So like we have normal, and then I cut this section out, transpose it up to semitones. Same thing there. Same thing in the MIDI. So you get then the rest is the same. There was about subtle variation here and there. Yeah, that's it. Just take the stem, chop it, pitch it, completely different riff. So second drop is the same riff, the same stem, just displaced by one beat. So instead of dun 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 dun, now it's one. Dun, it's 1, 2, dun 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 dun. You know what I mean? I just moved it all, as you can see, one beat. So we have if I play it, you know, where the stem starts. Yeah, so quick little trick, the lazy man's variation. That's me, I'm the lazy man. Take your initial riff, move it over one beat. Now it feels different. It's obviously the same, but because it lands in a different part of the bar and a different part of the groove, it has a different feel, and it's enough to be a second drop without rewriting the entire second drop. Rhythm is a variation. Like the second half feels completely different than the first half. And that's all you got to do that. Pro tip. I will find the simplest ways to do a second drop, believe me. So yeah, it fully is copy paste the first part of the first drop, just moved over by a beat. And then some of the fills are in the same spot, some of them aren't. And then other than that, there's like these mid bass fills, which are not even his stems. I think like there's one, which is, yeah, it's from a different track I was working on at this time. 2021. I think this came from the, what is it? The High Contrast remix. That's what these sounds are from. So I use them as fills because they're 808 based. You know what I mean? Take the same riff, give it a little pitch down, give it a little variation, some effects. You get. So it was just like 808s distorted and sort of like stretched, faded, manipulated to make bass fills. I hope this is giving you an idea how this tune came together. It really is just based off of Charlie's initial idea and then me just sort of figuring out my ways around it. I didn't want to write a completely new tune. I just wanted to build on what I heard, add a little bit here and there. I don't think we really had like a whole lot of discussion around like changes I had made. There wasn't a whole lot of like, nah, do this instead, do that. It was more like we understood what each other wanted and just sort of kept pushing it forward. So what's left is some synth, some of the pad stuff, loads of the effects. This tune is like built on effects. And that's it. I hope this is useful. Again, comment any questions you have, anything you want to go more in depth with. Like, comment, subscribe, all the good stuff. Go follow Charlie. I don't know, did he do anything with this? Yeah, this is his like pads and stuff. Yeah, that's his. And then I came in and edited it to give it this little, just an end of the bar. So again, taking that initial riff he made, giving it a slight change just to build on it, add some excitement, a sense of progression where it's going, some forward momentum. There's no real pads. These are just sound effects provided by my main man, Siren. Posted like a recording of himself of like being at the casino, as we call it. Kind of casino like machine sounds. Like video, you know, those kind of sounds that you would hear like in arcade and stuff like that. Pitched and all that, but drenched in reverb you get. Yeah. That's it. What's this airy stab effect? That's just me adding some like interest. Again, there's no like we flew through the melodic stuff because all of that is there to just sort of support the drums and the bass. You know what I mean? Just keep things moving. Effects wise, you got your splashes, your reverse crashes, blah, 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 blah. You got your string, which is just the same stem from an old track I made. Pitched down a bit less, and then pitched up an octave, you know, that kind of thing. If you ever heard like any sort of electronic music, you probably heard like a high string tossed in there for good measure. Yeah, altogether, you just get like this palette of effects and sound. So I've talked about this before, but like this extra like stuff in the mix, these effects, these atmospheric bits, these melodic bits, these are the details that can make your song, your tune more rich, more varied, add a bit of depth, give you something to listen to than just the main ideas. If this was just those drums and that bass and nothing else, like you'd get the same idea. But the idea feels more realized. It feels richer because of all this other stuff. It sort of creates this sound bed for which it works with. You know what I mean? So consider this like when writing your own tunes. You know what I mean? Like yeah, you got your main stuff down, but what else can you put in there to add something to it? Something can be just whatever you decide that something is. Something to support, something to help, something to add a bed or pad the sound. That's why it was pad means pad the sound. Just think of it more than just pieces like of a puzzle. Think about like how it makes you feel. Think about the world you're trying to put across. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be any deeper than you want it to concept wise, but like when you add these other touches and other flavors like of sound, whatever you want to call them, it makes it so much more interesting to listen to. And it does even come across more on the dance floor. You know, yeah, you hear less, you don't hear it as clearly. It's just being blared loudly. But like a good idea played loudly is what like all live music is based off of, you know what I mean? So if you can translate like the feeling in your mind into sound and put it in there, and it also supports the main idea that makes you dance and groove and all that good stuff, like then you have this fully realized thing that is more than just the singular idea that was based on, you know what I mean? If you've listened to anything I've ever said, maybe these videos, you already know what I'm talking about. But if I took all this away, it wouldn't feel the same. It'd be functionally the same, but it wouldn't feel the same. You know what I mean? It wouldn't have the same effects. So think about the effect your tune's having just as much as the main like 2-3 things you actually want to come across. You know what I mean? Yeah. But that's basically it. Like we have is like vox stabs, the vocal bits. He never told me what those are sampling, and I never asked. But yeah, that's like the whole tune, you know, it's taking Perspective's initial idea and just seeing it through. It is effectively like his idea plus my idea, you know, he set the stage and I sort of manipulated it with his ideas in mind and my ideas in mind. And I feel like that's what makes a collab. This is very much like his drums, his drum sound, and my like swingy, funky style at that time, but it's bass driven because of what he likes. And then all the effects and like the scene world building and all that stuff is mostly me. You know what I mean? So what you get is a blend of both of our sounds. And that makes, in my opinion, a true collab. You know what I mean? We didn't work on this at the same time or together in the same space, but we know each other musically and kind of on a personal level as well, especially this time. COVID, Discord, BSA, all that good stuff. If you were there, you remember. And that's how this came together. So now you know, a couple years later. But yeah, if you have any more questions, any ideas, whatever, stick them in the comments. We'll be happy to answer them, go in deeper on anything. Follow Perspective, see what he's up to. All links in my description, links to his channel and stuff. Follow me if you want to know what I'm up to, if you want to hear more of this. I'll be happy to let you know we have some more tunes in the pipeline because it's sort of revived, like going through this, thinking about this tune again, sort of revived some stuff we were, you know, talked about around this time. That's it. I hope you learned something. Hope this was useful. Hope this was entertaining, even if you don't make music and you just like seeing what happens. Some behind the scenes stuff. You know the drill. I'll catch you next time. Later. What happened to that boy? I got too busy and like haven't been making videos. That's what happened to that boy.